Hello all of you wonderful beings out there, and welcome back to the stream. I am Razim, and this is TCG Card Shop Simulator. We have Wicked Whiskers down there in the bottom left working on art, and we are using the TF Talkies this evening, so you can transform me live here on stream, everyone. Now, I have been doing a bit of an experiment because I want to know what happens if I just don't pay my rent. Hopefully it's not going to be a situation of, oh, my entire shop is shut down. But we'll find out. Because I don't want to go in there and have to remember to pay it every single day. Of course, this game is kind of has a lot of busy work with it. Like having to go update prices every day.
But it extends the gameplay. That means it's good.
Uh-huh. God, my little shop is so cluttered. Oh, it bugs the heck out of me. But it's not like I got much choice for things right now. I don't have the money to expand it more. Not paying rent is fine, just don't skip on your taxes. Oh, I know, right? You never mess with them. Oh, hey, they put in the market price here. We'll give you $17. Cool. They have made that much easier. I appreciate the devs for this game actually, you know, making things simpler. Now, if they would actually have prices update properly, or give us some notification of, hey, this has gone up in value, or down, or whatever the case may be, then we'd be golden.
Shiny Sable Room.
Oh my god.
Shiny what?
Apparently shiny Sable.
I like how Seda pipes up as soon as he hears a Pokemon related thing.
Like, I do love my shiny hunting.
Sorry, Seda, I'm claiming this shiny Sable Root. You'll have to get your own.
Fine. Plus, I need to get a Moonball anyway.
I feel like I missed something with that conversation there.
Don't worry about it. Just get in the Pokeball.
And what, Lucci? No. I'm pretty sure Raijin said he's laid out claim.
What if we get a Ditto?
You're wanting to forcefully breed me?
Hey, you said it, not me.
Mm-hmm. Raijin cute dook doo doo dook. Raijin cute dook doo doo dook. Raijin cute dook doo doo dook. Raijin cute.
Sorry, I would be talking more, but I have to take a short lunch today because we have so much crap to deal with because of the freaking towels.
Dude, I don't have that kind of money. I will offer you the $800 I've got. Oh, he was so offended he just left. I don't know what he was expecting. I don't have $5,000 just sitting here. Jeez. No stinkers allowed. Then you will be forcefully de-stinkified, Lucci. I have a license for it. I didn't say anything about giving you a bath. I just said I'm gonna de-stinkify you. And by that I mean I'm going to take this can of deodorant and spray you with it until you no longer stink. Oh. I got a nice card. But that was expensive. Thank you, come again. Please buy all my stuff. Thank you, come again. Buy everything.
I'm being told to expect Friday to be even worse as well.
Oh no.
So considering the fact that I'm probably not going to get any sleep between when I wake up tonight, all the way through the end of my shift Friday. Yay.
Hugs.
Oh.
Bean, you're getting hugs when I see you.
Yes, yes he is. And a lot of them. And kisses. But that's my special privilege. Mwah.
Mwah. Well, if it's your special privilege, why has Rin started begging me for kisses too?
It's different when it comes from a pet. For a pet, it's just that, you know, they mlem you all over your face.
Ah, I see. So should I not give Seda a kiss at MFF?
I think you'll have to ask Abby about that. And for that matter, Seda.
I will defer to Abby on that one, though I would suspect probably cheeks are fine.
Oh yeah, I was gonna do a cheek kiss. Don't worry. And yes, I was gonna check with Abby too.
Yeah, I am not paying more than market price on anything, buddy. Oh, hello there. Fine. I will give it. I find it funny when they offer me to sell a card to me and they just kind of back away and then they're like, I didn't think I'd get this far. And then they turn around and give me my money back by buying stuff. I always like that. Okay. I need another box of those. I need... You know what? Oh, I can't afford any of that. Never mind. But I can get some of these. Another box of these. I think a box of that? No. Not that one. This one. Purchase successful. Alright, put that down. We got some new dice colors we can sell today. And let's open packs. Do 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 do. By the way, Seda.
Zim.
I was reading some of what you were talking about with the classes for Scar.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea how we'd make those work.
Yeah, it's why I am primarily trying, I'm putting my thoughts there just so I don't forget them, because I think they're discussions worth bringing up, but I am more focused on gathering the feedback.
So I think I actually had a pretty decent idea myself, which if you want to, we can talk about this now. I just wasn't sure if it was a very appropriate time. Though I will admit,
Go on.
if I'm talking about this now, where I'm working, there are a couple of other people in there having discussions too, so I don't know if the noise is going to be annoying.
Yeah, I don't want to get too deep into it because it is almost 5 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
But give me a moment to just gather my thoughts.
Sure. I can give you a brief outline of something that I was thinking too. If you want that now, or wait until you gather your thoughts or whatever.
I know I'm good to go. So I'm also kind of getting a text conversation as well on the side. Yeah, like pretty much the issue that I think that we've been kind of been raising, that the more I think about it, and I'm still not finalized on my thoughts on it, is I feel like one of the more confusing aspects of Scar at the moment is that it's almost too open-ended. You have a lot of different options to expand your character, feats, specialties, skills, moves, but there isn't much of a gentle breeze to push you in a direction or to help guide you develop your character. And so the passing thought that I had with that is the primeval features. They are functionally in themselves almost like classes. So while Scar doesn't have a class-like structure right now, in some regards, what if they did? What if, as opposed to saying, hey, here's a set class, here's what you can do, you had, Greaves, for example, say, well, hey, if we look at anyone's individual story, you can almost, broaden them down to, 5 categories. You have the builders, you have the fighters, you have the knowledge seekers, you have, I know the harmonious ones. That's discussion more for a more well-waked topic. But what if you kind of based a broad approach, maybe a combat approach around body, a magic approach, almost like a primeval path, as you could say, a magic approach around mind, or the diplomacy or the talky, essentially almost like the bard around soul or something like that. Assignments, give or take. But then you broke that down where, someone who is, focusing more on their body and their vigor might be more of a melee, might be more of a combatant. But someone who is using body and mind might be more of a crafter. You kind of give little trinkets here and there that aren't make or break for a character, but they're little bits of guidance. And you aren't locked into them. You can effectively multi-class, diversify. And that kind of led me to the broader point of what's the quote-unquote level 24 Scar. Because if we were to keep things completely open-ended, characters that eventually would start homogenizing. Even if 80-90% of campaigns would never reach that, what does the end game look like? Because having complete freedom is good, but also in some regards putting a cap on that choice ensures you keep character identity and diversity and allow, in some regards, a greater degree of balance.
So you're kind of suggesting that we might, like, limit things for...
So the way I'm going to put it, because I think I've got a good idea of what Sata wants, like, or what Sata's suggestion. It's more like offering an option where the guardrails are on for the players that kind of need that, but clearly, like, obviously with the system, you can take the guardrails off if you like you can take the guardrails off very easily without like sacrificing anything. And obviously this might be the more powerful option, but there's going to be a lot of players who will need those guardrails, not just for the sake of being able to handle the difficulty that the system presents, but also some players like having that structure for the purpose of developing their characters. Like take Pathfinder, for example, and like Pathfinder is difficult and you struggle with it because Pathfinder doesn't have guardrails. Really. It's just you have all of Pathfinder. Does that make sense? Is that kind of like what you're thinking, Seda?
Yeah, like and like in a bit of my shower thoughts, because I was actually thinking a little bit about while walking today. Like, I feel like if like primeval features were almost in a sense expanded into like a pseudo class structure, like primeval paths, there would be a path in the center that is the unaligned, those that don't lean towards any other category, and it's effectively what we have now. You, as opposed to maybe getting a set degree of features, you get additional I don't know, discount experience purchases or whatever, however you want to balance it, but basically like your guardrails are off. Because Rajan, you were observing something that like I didn't necessarily pick up on because I'm only mainly focused on the Starlight game. There can be a pretty big disparagement between like someone who really knows how to optimize the system, optimize the character, versus those that are like, oh, I have this amount of XP unspent, or hey, I'm just kind of putting a little bit into everything.
To be fair, my main observation with that was with alternate reality Vane. And I don't know if alternate reality Vane is using the same merits in XP as the main Lost in Chaos crew. But with how long Lost in Chaos has gone and how much XP they would have accrued, like, I think hypothetically they should be able to make very powerful stuff. Which is kind of leaning in towards the other thing I was talking about. That's kind of getting off topic of the class thing.
Well, off topic from that, I have been debating the idea of removing the XP per session. Because of the fact that you have games like Lost in Chaos, where people will sit there and do literally nothing for sessions on end. It's kind of like, well, where does the storyteller get to draw the line there on how much they can advance? Because literally they could just filibuster themselves into, oh, now we're ready to face God.
Yeah, and especially since there is a lot that's purchasable by experience points, because really only the attributes and the merits are essentially storyteller gated.
Yeah.
But, considering that you have skills, specialties, and feats on top of that, you can very easily compensate for that if you invest hard enough.
Yeah, that's a big thing I was talking about, but I would say like for the sake of brevity and since it's so late for Sega, to add on, I would like to kind of try and reframe it and step away from calling it classes and more focus on the idea of like archetypes or roles, because I think that's going to be a lot more poignant than classes for this particular example. And the particular idea I had was kind of like with what Seda is saying with the primeval features. Basically, what if like we did a system where you could more or less invest your XP into a pre-built archetype that sort of, it's not anything different from what you can create yourself, but it kind of sets you on a concrete, unified path towards that archetype. And as you progress through the game and get more experience, you can keep going through steps of this process. So like on character creation, instead of spending all your XP like you normally would, you would just spend all your XP on, for example, the striker archetype, which means you're going to be very good at dealing damage and getting upfront and personal with enemies or whatever. And that would give you the package deal. It would assign not all, but some of your attributes. And it would give you specific moves already designed that would optimize for that. Or alternatively, you could spend all your XP on the controller archetype, and that would give you some crowd controlling elements. Or, you could be the leader archetype and have a healing ability, something like that. And it's not necessarily different from what you can already do, but it simplifies the process in a package deal, is kind of what I'm thinking. And that's more or less the quote-unquote classes of the system.
I am definitely not against the idea of making it, we've got certain guidelines that people can go down for those that do need those guardrails. I'm not against that. But I also don't want to have it have any situation of like Pathfinder where, okay, you are stuck being a mage forever.
Well, that's kind of why I'm suggesting a step-by-step process. Like, when you're creating your character, you can start out with the whatever archetype you want, but you're not stuck down that path. It's just that you spend the EXP to get that package deal. And then in the future, like, let's say at level 1, you spend almost all of your XP, or not level, but on session 1, you spend like 50 XP, you get this package. You have 10 XP left to put it wherever you want, which isn't a whole lot to work with, but I mean, it's something. So, there's a little bit of difference between like people picking the same archetype. And then let's say the next step would be 100 XP. And that would just like be another package that pushes you further down this archetype. You don't have to save for that, but you can if it helps, if you need it, or something like that. Like a stepped process that you can choose to go down if it helps you, but you don't have to. And it also creates these sort of pseudo-level milestones that people can, invest in and sort of see their character progressing in a more concrete way, as opposed to the current system where like every session you get your 5 XP and you get like little ship amounts of progress and you like slightly improve one ability here or there, or etc. The key thing being that it's all optional,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, my kind of thoughts are, I feel like are actually a little bit more aggressive. Because, like, I actually kind of envision something a bit more where yeah, like you could just bake in class-like features and tie it to certain attribute milestones. Like maybe like if you were to go down like the shape-shifting path, every 5 attributes you would be able to get a new feature associated with that, as opposed to being directly tied to experience points purchases. But in the interest of freedom of Scar, just because you've gone down a path doesn't mean you can't change your path. Because I think locking people down a certain effectively class is not ideal. And I could see like some very interesting potential there of saying, well, hey, you've gone down the path of magic. Well, what kind of magic? Are you doing more of the, potions? Are alchemy? Are you doing actual, like, physical, like, sorcery magic? Break it up into different flavors that tie with different attributes. But kind of before I get too deep down that train of thought, like, I am definitely more curious about gathering as broad feedback as I can on the system overall. Because what I might think might be a potential issue, I might be the only one who thinks it. So I don't want to go down and propose all these wacky wild changes to potentially bring a bit more cohesion to the system if it doesn't need it. I'm definitely interested in asking more questions on hey, what's your experience with the tabletops? Do you find Scar to be a clear system to use? Is it fun to use? Does the game, do certain aspects of the game like, skill, specialties, attributes, the dice mechanics even, do these make the game more fun for you? Do they bring more engagement? Do you find it's clear to advance your character? Do you feel like you have a degree of flexibility? Do you feel you have too much flexibility or not enough? And gather that from both the perspective of people who are playing the game or maybe are only taking a cursory glance, because we do want to try to bring in new people to the system. Trying to figure out, is there anything that we're overlooking as we're developing the system? Could there be something that we need to do a better job on? Is there something that maybe need to correct course on?
I definitely want to get some feedback from the community on this, yeah. There's not... it's been a while since our last general survey, and I would like to have those going at least every 6 months, if not maybe every quarter. Don't want it to be too often, because it might annoy people, but What was that?
Yeah, and I'm gonna have... Go on, Regin.
I do want to point out 2 things. First of all, Seda, I did say this last month when we were talking, but as a reminder, there are some things that will simply make more sense once the other core systems are put in place, specifically martial and magic. Because you're kind of talking about it, but at the same time, once martial and magic is put in place, that's going to help a lot of people make decisions towards that sort of class-based structure that they might want. But also, I was just going to say, it was a long time ago. It was probably back in March or April before moves were even really fine with this. But I was thinking that the system might benefit from classes. So this has kind of been a long-term thought that I've had anyway. And I don't really like the idea of specifically classes in the traditional sense now, But I do like the idea of archetypes, especially in the sense of how fourth edition has rolled with archetypes. But I don't know if Zim is actually very familiar with that.
I am not familiar with 4th edition beyond. They basically tried to make an MMO out of a tabletop game. And it was monetized to hell.
And pivoting back a little bit, I'm gonna have to double check because I think Taldarius did the last like big major feedback forum.
He did.
I'm very curious what to refresh myself on what was asked on that specifically. Because
I will say we've got a recording on the YouTube of it. Us going over it and stuff.
Another loyal devotee.
I don't remember where the link is, but at the least, the best way to go across through the results and stuff for what we were doing on stream. Amethyst Light, thanks for that follow. Welcome.
So to clarify what I mean with the fourth edition archetypes, it is kind of like an MMO with the what MMOs call the Holy Trinity, which is tank, healer, DPS. In fourth edition, they had striker, leader, controller, and defender. So strikers were centered around doing the bulk of the damage. Controllers were centered around doing a whole bunch of crowd control and detrimental effects to the enemies. Leaders were the ones buffing the allies and providing healing, and defenders were, they dealt some damage, but they were focused more on being the big tanky, your paladin or your barbarian kind of person. The big buff dudes that the enemies couldn't ignore. And I know that there's been, I do agree that from a more experienced tabletoping perspective, it's kind of unnecessary because there's so much more that goes into the tabletop. But I think this does kind of, in a broader sense, have a very good structure for overall combat archetypes. And I think expanding on this might be a good idea. Not literally doing it, but using it as a baseline and improving.
It's going well, Amethyst. We're just talking about our tabletop RPG system that we've been developing on the side here while I'm working on, or while I'm playing the game. How did I set up TF redeems? Very carefully. It's mostly through a program called Sammy, but, oh boy. It's a complicated mess. But if you do exclamation point potion, it'll explain how it all works. Sure. But one of my big concerns about the classes is just I'm A-okay with giving some guidelines. That I would be 100% on board with. But actually limiting the creativity of people, like, oh, you have to go down this specific class in order to get access to this. No. I will not do that. And likewise...
Yeah, that's why... Go ahead.
And likewise, I also will not be putting in, you know, special bonuses just because they're going down a class.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm like leaning towards the idea of it being a sort of pre-made package deal that is inclusive and complete for the purpose of an archetype. And it's like once more feats are put in place, once the more of the primeval features are put in place, once we have you know, martial and magic, it's going to make a lot more sense having those package deals, and it kind of serves the purpose of classes without, you know, potentially limiting things. It's like I said, guardrails on if you need the guardrails, but you don't need to have them on, and you don't lose anything by you don't lose anything by taking them.
Oh no, absolutely, and I think even with my core concept at the moment, the quote-unquote class features would still be purchasable even if you weren't going down that class path. I think just like it's taking the idea of the guardrails and kind of making it a little bit more, I'd say a little bit more cohesive up front. Because I think I'm also, in some regards, thinking about it in another way. I'm definitely more interested in seeing if more... if a little bit more structure could be brought to the system if you put a couple things behind attribute levels. But I noticed a couple of the feats are require you to have, like, you know, 15, 20 attributes. Wondering if bringing that to, you know, each of the almost like the primeval features would provide a more meaningful sense of focus and power growth as opposed to, well, this is just a couple XP, this is just a couple XP.
I'm certainly not against the idea of putting attribute requirements on those. I know I'm not I know that I'm generally trying to avoid going much higher than about attribute 30. Because the way I'm kind of seeing the system is attribute 30 is going to be basically endgame. You're not going to be maxed on every attribute, but you shouldn't be. So that's kind of where I'm seeing the end game be, is attribute 30. Granted, you know, some of them might go to 40, but we might have some capstone abilities at attribute 40, but definitely nothing past that. Nice, Amethyst.
Yeah, and I think that kind of like brings it a bit around to one of my thoughts there is, what is Scar's quote unquote level 20? If that's 30 or if that's 40, then, you know, then you can kind of design some of those capstone features around that level, and the entire essentially like power progression of the system is based around that's our theoretical endpoint. You can go past it and you can almost open up discussions on, hey, what does a campaign post the capstone look like? Because yeah, if you look at like from the typical D&D progression, you go from like fighting, rats in a tavern cellar to, taking on gods when you're level 20. You can certainly go past level or adventure through level 20 and take on everything is boons. I think is the correct term for that. You have you have different features and different boons that kind of can, increase your stats or increase your abilities, kind of make you even more godly than you already are. I think, like, if you capped it at, let's just say 30, you still have a lot more flexibility to incorporate systems that put you past that, but you do kind of put a solid limit on, hey, this is typically where, you would be ending things because you are almost legendary at that point.
Yeah. Amethyst, I've got over 25 of them now. I have a lot of the TF talkies.
I mean, also, could you imagine if like a version of like going primal just basically gave you like a plus 10 into every stat? Or plus 5 into every stat? If you technically cap at 30 and you suddenly just have 40 attributes? Oh boy.
Yeah.
And also, I did some digging. We've actually not had a general feedback form. Taldarius's form back in February was only on move and move creation.
Oh, yeah.
So we have never actually put together a form on, I guess, the broader aspects of the system.
Well then, there's your job.
I will start working on that. Actually, I technically already did start working on that. I made the form today. I was also thinking about some of the questions I could be asking in terms of how do we essentially qualify the feedback. Because if we were to, get, say, feedback from someone who, has never touched a tabletop system before and they say this is bloody confusing, well, you know what? I'm going to take that feedback and weight it a lot less compared to someone who maybe has played D&D Pathfinder. Crap, my brain. What's the freaking system that Shadowrun?
Oh,
I was thinking Shadowrun. Like Shadowrun, Fantasy Flight, Dark Heresy. Like, if you have someone who says, like, hey, I've played all these tabletops and I think this is something you can improve upon, weight that a lot higher than someone who's like, I only just watch these games.
I will say that personally, I would weight the feedback of somebody. No.
Yeah, actually, I misspoke there a little bit. Like, I think someone who is like interested in the system, or watches the system, definitely important feedback, but I think it's understanding what kind of feedback we're getting is
Yeah.
more point I'm getting. Like,
people who have some experience are going to be weighted the highest. Those with no experience would be rated weighted the least, and those with a lot of experience, some of what they say, will look at it obviously, but it might be taken with a bit more of a grain of salt.
absolutely.
Because a lot of the time when you're talking with people that like Pathfinder, for example, everything they do has to be Pathfinder.
Oh,
Which is
absolutely.
a
Like, you
problem
don't.
that we've run into.
Oh yeah, I know it's where like I definitely want to frame a lot of my questions around, hey, is this clear? Is this fun?
Yeah, that's the way we want to do it.
Oh,
You know,
I will also say, just for the sake of clarity, I think my own particular opinion is kind of in a weird place because, like, I actually haven't even made a single character sheet. And while I've barely read the SRD, most of my experience and knowledge just comes from the fact that I keep up to date with all of the games. So,
yeah, and like
kind of a weird spot.
yeah, and actually, I kind of want to retract some of my wording a little bit. Like, I don't want to necessarily say weigh the feedback, but it's how you interpret the feedback. Because I think,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
a better way to put it.
because I think, like, taking it's important for us to be able to take a wide degree of viewpoints. People who like you and I, who are more heavily involved in the direct day-to-day development of the system. I think you and Taldarius, and I think like Era and a couple other people more especially. I'm kind of just the person to be like, this isn't clear. But like, but then the people who play the system, week in, they're in one of the games. People who have maybe played in a one shot or been playing in a play test, and then people who view the games. People who like, is the system fun to watch? Is the system piquing people's interest to check it out, and then are we losing people out the door because they see like, well, like, actually I don't understand what's going on when I see this. I think like seeing who's actually giving that feedback and what kind of feedback they're giving can kind of inform, well, hey, is the problem we're looking at something that's more mechanical that we might need to adjust and reevaluate, or is it something that's more of a, we're not making this clear?
Good night, Amethyst, if I didn't say that. I think I did, but either way. I will say one thing that we will want to also include is a question of what kind of style of game do you want? Like in the case of Raijin, he wants basically all combat. In my case, I like a nice balance of both. And there's a lot of different people out there with a lot of different desires on that front, and we gotta... It's a balancing act between all of them.
Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna lie. I'm imagining this form's gonna be like at least 100 questions.
I would definitely say let's keep it shorter and maybe do it in parts.
Parts I can do.
Like, let's focus it down on one thing, because we don't want people to get tired of... Because if you sit down and do a survey for a while, you kind of just start being like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then we start getting bad data out of it.
I see your point. I think for me, where I'm really interested in is trying to capture a single image and have that be as broad as possible, because I feel like if we're looking at things too focused, like, the moves or just like the character sheet, we might be missing certain elements. I think if we try to capture as broad of a snapshot of the system as possible, if we were to, let's just say, get a feedback on, let's just say specialties, and we decide to skip the, let's just say the dice system, or the character creation. If we don't get all that information in essentially a single place or within a short period of each other, then we might react to the feedback we get on specialties without recognizing that the problem might actually exist somewhere else. Or at least make sure that if we need to make multiple changes, those changes can be a bit more cohesive.
I mean, yes, but like I said, that problem of too many questions and people are just not going to bother. I know if you asked me to sit down and do a survey that's 100 questions long, I don't, even for my own system, I would say, sure. I ain't gonna dedicate an hour of my life or more to do a survey.
Definitely not imagining an hour. I mean, and most of these questions, I'd be doing like either a checkbox, or like a sliding scale, like 7-point scale for, mostly disagree or mostly agree. Because I feel like a 5 points too limiting and 10 points too much.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's also the kinds of questions we ask and what kind of information we want to try to get from people is, it's something definitely worthy of discussion. But I am interested in touching on every aspect, even the stuff that's been there from basically day one, because I want to make sure that everything is on the right path, or at least we have a direction for putting things and clarifying things.
I 100% agree on that front. Even there's some older stuff that could probably use a nice rework.
Absolutely, and I definitely feel like a bit more strongly on the I don't like the sunk cost fallacy. So I am in my brain, I'm like, okay, if you have to completely rewrite the entire system to make it what it wants to be, so be it. And I know I'm saying that with the, oh god, there's been 100 pages of writing, you don't want to toss that in the trash. I know.
I mean, have you looked at what I've done on this system so far? Yes. I have done that multiple times already. I will not do like when we had that combat thing with Starlight, where there were people who were outright telling me just scrap it all and start over. I ain't going with general, quote-unquote feedback like that. That's not something I can work with. But specific parts and specific things that are bad, I can work with that. But like I said, when people were just saying, just scrap it all, I can't do that because I don't know what's wrong with it in the first place. What's the point in scrapping it if I don't know what to fix?
Yep, and that's where I am interested in putting those questions of, clarity and fun. Because it's if something's confusing, you don't know what to do, you're not going to have fun. But if something on the flip side is, even if you understand it, is mechanically like complicated, you might not have fun with it. Like I know I've spoken a couple times on. I definitely feel like the lack of automation in Scar right now is probably one of the biggest roadblocks for me. Like properly understanding, is something mechanically a problem, or is it just the technical aspects that's holding things back? Because as we roll more and more dice, having to manually count 20 dice to see what my roll is, when I look back to D&D 5e and I roll a single dice and I add my bonus to it, it's like, yeah, like I see the mechanical benefits of this. I like what I can mess with this, but this is a slog.
That is something that is kind of a concern to me too, especially because, like was pointed out by Zen, like for the main thing I like tabletops for is dungeon crawling, which is a lot of combat or a lot of skill checks, so it's a lot of dice rolling, and it's fine in the earlier stages when you're mostly only rolling 4, 5, 6 dice maybe. But now we've got Starlight and Lost in Chaos. They're up to over a dozen dice in some circumstances. And imagining that in the kinds of 5th edition games I've played with how many dice have been rolled there, even with automation, it's kind of hard for me to really think that it's okay for it to get even crazier than that. Also, granted, I have no knowledge of Exalted or World of Darkness. Those are systems that I never played, and I know that's what a lot of the DOT system comes from. So I don't know how it feels there. But, especially even if you automate it in a virtual tabletop, trying to play this in person with that many dice might get kind of suffocating eventually. And I almost kind of hate to say it, but at some point, is the exploding dice too much?
I personally don't have any issues with it. It's like knowing exactly what dice is what hasn't been a hindrance. The few rolls where you actually use the face value of the dice, we specifically keep very low amounts of dice. But otherwise, it's like, okay, this is a 7, cool, it counts. This isn't a 7 or above, nope, moving on. Now, granted, I am not the only person there, but I also haven't heard any reports of anybody else struggling with this personally. That doesn't mean that there aren't people, but that is why an anonymous survey is definitely good.
Yep. Because, I mean, it's something that, as from my personal experience in Starlight's been going on, it's like rolling 6, 7 dice. Okay, cool. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, cool. I have 4 successes. But now we're starting to get to, I'm rolling 13, 15 dice. Even just that, effectively doubling it's kind of like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that looks like a 7. That's or an 8. I feel like if that was automated and you just had the successes light up, the not successes and the critical fails and exploding dice just showed up automatically, and I could be like, hey, cool, I just need to reroll that, or hey, I'll just drop that, reroll that, add that. It'd be probably a bit quicker, but I also kind of think oh god, trying to do this system in person, I'm trying to actually imagine doing Scar physically in person and being okay, I'm gonna grab my handful of dice and Oh god, like 5 that went off the table.
I mean, I've done Exalted in person, and Exalted deals with a lot more dice than what Scar does.
Less. Less.
I haven't had issues in person with that. But also, the thing to keep in mind there is one of the downfalls of 5th edition in particular, where they tried to limit how much of a bonus you get. There comes a point where it's like, what's the point of continuing my character? I've already met the cap for what I want to do. I can't just get more. There's just... I'm at the end. And so if we try to limit the amount of dice that people are rolling, well... The amount of dice is kind of one of the integral parts of how you determine how... It's part of feeling like your character is progressing. Like you're actually getting stronger.
Absolutely, and I think there's also a fair argument to be made in terms of, you know, you could trade the number of dice for flat bonuses.
That is one thing that I've been considering.
Like, go on, sorry.
I have been considering doing that. That was something that I kind of floated with Tal before. I don't remember what the response was, but...
I mean, like, heck, this is 5:30 a.m. brain, so apologies if this is, like, an absolutely silly idea, but... I mean, like, what if, like, hypothetically you distilled the dice roll down to just 3 dice, 1 for your attribute, 1 for your expertise, 1 for your skill, and you had an associated bonus that you added on top of that.
I personally would find that boring as hell.
Fair enough. As I said, this is 5:30 a.m. brain.
I was mostly listening. Sorry, I was with my manager, but I was mostly listening. To clarify, the big thing that I'm taking note of, and I'll be completely blunt and honest here, I'm leaning towards blaming the players, honestly. But as someone listening to the tabletops and trying to keep up with it, I'm up to watching Lost in Chaos at 3x speed, because even still, after all this time, there's so frequently so much dead air of just trying to figure out roles. Because there's so much that goes into every singular role. And some of that comes down to the lack of roles, because everyone always has the resources every single session to make a decision about willpower or soul on every single roll, because not enough rolls are being made that people are running out of these resources. Like, no one's actually hitting the point where exhaustion matters because nothing ever happens in these games. I'm sorry, I'm just going to be blunt about it. But it is still a notable concern right now. And I do make this concern having never played Exalted, so I don't actually have any experience of rolling with this many dice. And it's also a case of, like, target audience. I know our target audience is not the people that could only stay in 5th edition, because clearly we are well beyond the complexity of 5th edition. I think myself, personally, I can handle these dice numbers, but as an audience member listening to other people struggle with these dice numbers, and it's not just in Lost in Chaos, it's in Starlight, it happens, even sometimes in Wild Tradition, but Wild Tradition is moving very smoothly. There has been a lot of time lost just on people trying to wrap their heads around the concept of what a D10 is, and I put a lot of that on the players, but even still it's happening. And as the dice pools get larger, this issue only gets worse.
Okay. But what do we do to fix it? That's kind of the problem here, is like, I don't have any idea how to fix that.
I mean, it's, first of all, is it even something that is worth fixing? Like, going back to the, target audience thing, if Exalted deals with more dice than this, then maybe it's not an issue if your target audience is the kind of people that would enjoy Exalted. Is that a decision that's okay to, possibly cut out a bunch of people that frankly cannot handle this number of dice and struggle with it?
Yeah. Well, I guess the pathway to the solution, if there is one, because I think it's better to frame, well, what is the particular problem that we are observing? Is it the fact that we are rolling 20 dice? Because a lot of systems also do a lot of dice rolls like that. Is it the fact that, we are slowing down our games because we are counting all those dice? Could that be more of a, as I said, like an automation problem? Is it the...
I do want to pause right here. I don't like the idea of associating Scar itself with an automation problem. Which a lot of the way that you're phrasing this is coming across to me, and it's like, not every game's going to have access to, a means of automating. We could absolutely put out an app that just automates rolls and automatically does that. We could do that, but automation is not part of the system. How you actually, like, the way that you are physically or digitally rolling dice is not part of Scar. Just like it's not part of D&D that D&D doesn't have a built-in, oh, you bought our book? Well, here's a dice.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm certainly not trying to say that we should distill it down. Like, I don't like the idea of just the 3 dice option as well. I do think there is a lot of charm in having many dice, but I think the number of options that arise with every dice, and part of it also simply is the fact that as a stream game, there's also the cards that people can play. So sometimes there's filibustering to wait for cards or influence. And I try to discount that as much as possible, but having watched way too many, I might be completely freaking biased on this. So I will certainly admit that. But automation is just a band-aid. Because ideally, this game should be completely fine and enjoyable to play in person. So, like, what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling is that for a long time, there has been an overwhelming, to me, it feels like an overwhelming amount of the rolls made lean towards the direction of people spending a lot of time on it, especially when it comes to something that hypothetically is relatively simple. And it's not just the amount of dice to roll, but it's also the every single roll you can make the decision with soul, and then you make the decision with willpower, and then you roll it again, and then you get to make the decision of soul again because soul gets refunded if you willpower it, and then you have this with basically every single roll, because in all of the current campaigns, except for Wild Traditions, basically, no one's really racking up the exhaustion where the drawbacks of these decisions come into play. And Taldarius even mentioned in the Scar Dev chat that Soul is currently the absolutely, like, the best choice to pump, because it's so useful, especially with feats going off of Soul as well.
That is something that is kind of beside the point here, I think. Like, one stat being stronger than another is a balancing issue, whereas this is just about rolling dice and whether they should have
Yeah.
that many and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what I'll say is, instead of saying that it's too many dice, I think it's too many options with every single dice roll. And I don't think just I think we can say that this is partially a systemic issue, but I don't know where to address it. Though, like, the more I air this out and talk about it, I'm kind of leaning towards soul and willpower and vigor. They're very powerful options and they're very good, but in the way these games are played, which means in the way a lot of games are played, these options are available for a large majority of every player's goals.
I think that I personally believe the majority of the problem that you guys have been describing here is actually coming from a lack of rolls. Because that is one thing that every tabletop game, people are going to struggle at the start. They're learning how to play, they're figuring things out with their characters and such. It is just a fact. Now, if you've got a table full of experienced players sitting down, yeah, they're not going to struggle that much, if at all. But we've had a lot of new players. And part of the problem that we're running into is more that lack of using the system. Because like you pointed out multiple times, Lost in Chaos, there's what, 2, maybe 3 rolls in a 5-hour session? And that's not enough for people to get the feel for the system. That's not enough for it to be retained. Whereas with Wild Traditions, yeah, there's still a couple of hiccups here and there, but overall, I'm feeling like people are getting it right away because I came out the gate like, okay, you want to do this? Make a roll. You want to do that? Make a roll. Have a roll here, have a roll there. We are on session 8 coming up next. And people are not struggling with rolls nearly as much as they do in Lost in Chaos and Last Hope and Starlight, because they've been able to actually properly learn the system instead of being left to, okay, 5 sessions later, you finally actually make a roll for the first time in 5 sessions. Oh, you forgot how to do it?
I do mostly agree with that. And I mean, I really am. I'm trying to avoid, like, what the heck? Okay. I'm trying to avoid, like, putting the blame on specific people because it's hard, because chemistry in a group is so important for a tabletop game. Like, I don't want to talk about my feelings on Lost in Chaos publicly anymore. I think there's been very rough spots, and I'm not entirely certain if the chemistry of the group is that great. But I'm just trying to identify if this is a problem endemic to the SCAR system, or if it really is simply the case that the campaign itself is struggling to utilize the SCAR system. And Wild Traditions is a really good example of it just being the lack of utilization. But I am also trying to envision, like, if I were playing a mid-game or late game of Scar and trying to do dungeon crawling, and I'm manually rolling all of those d10s and counting every single time, I'm just not sure. And it's kind of, I guess that's something that I just need to experience to really get a good opinion on. But since Seda brought it up, I just thought I'd mention it myself, that like I do have concerns about that.
Yeah, like, and let me add on to that, like, if we were to go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, that I think is personally way too far, and we look at like how D&D 5e handles their dice, it's as bloody simple as you can get it. You roll a d20, sometimes two of you have advantage, pick the higher one, and you add a flat bonus to that, which, you know, has the advantage of making it pretty clear, oh, well, hey, I rolled nat 20, I automatically hit, or, hey, I rolled a 16 plus, 6, cool, I have 22 on that, I hit your AC, pretty easy, done. Now, combat can flow pretty well because of its simplicity, but it's too simplistic. Yeah. I really like how Scar is approaching things, because I like the idea of, well, hey, you're making your successes for your dice more difficult. You're effectively, in like the D&D sense, increasing or decreasing your DC. Like, I like the idea of, like, if I doing something that I'm more attuned to, I'm looking for sixes. Like, it's almost a coin flip of if I'm succeeding or not, which with the amount of dice you're rolling, you almost always are. I do enjoy that interaction. But, I enjoy a garden hose, being sprayed on a hot summer day. I don't want a fire hydrant.
To take it away from comparing it to 5th edition a little bit, I do really enjoy 4th edition. I'm like one of the 3 people in the world that likes 4th edition. I get it. I understand that it's not that great of a system to most people. One of the major complaints I've always heard, besides the MMO thing, is that once you get past heroic tier and you're getting into Paragon tier and higher, combat takes so long. And the reason for this is because everyone starts building up all of these abilities that they have these free reactions and magic items that resolve to give +2s and -2s and bonuses and all this kind of stuff. And it's stacking effects onto effects onto effects. So every single round, you have like everyone chiming in with this effect or that effect for every single roll. And it gets very overwhelming and very slow, and it bogs the system down. And I fully agree with that. Like, having experienced that, it is certainly one of the drawbacks of 4th edition. And not just like, I'm not saying that's how it is now, but it kind of reminds me of that feeling with how all of these roles have all of these options, and this wouldn't be true if more roles were made. True, very accurate. But also I'm thinking going forward, when people might start having magic items, or when they might have things to do with like reactions in, like, I guess that's not even exactly correct, but like when people start doing more interesting things with initiative, I guess I should say, and things start taking a longer time to resolve, that on top of all the dice that you're rolling, it's just something that's on my radar. I'm not saying to change it just yet. It's on my radar.
And that, as well as like rounding things back to the start, is where I'm definitely curious on gathering the feedback. Because, like, I know for myself, I started playing tabletop with Dark Heresy 2nd edition. Which is a D100 system, which, God, that completely like set my brain for a loop when I switched over to D&D. It's like, yes, in Dark Heresy 2nd edition, critical run, oh my goodness, the God Emperor's on your side. And if you roll 100, your gun basically explodes in your face, and you're probably going to get messed up. So going to complete up the ring with wait, 1's bad, a 20's good, what? You know, I started on that, I went to D&D 5e, did a brief dabble in 3.5, didn't really like it too much. And, you know, then switched over to Pokeballs. Like, I don't have the extensive tabletop experience with multiple systems that other people have. So, like, I know my perspective in terms of effectively knowing with a single dice roll, yes, I hit, no, I don't hit, is definitely very much skewed in perspective. And, yeah, and as I said, I have been enjoying the nuance of being able to effectively manipulate the dice, you know, in my advantage with, you know, my skills and expertise. Or even with the role-playing. So, like, I don't know if, like, you know, like, as you said, Sim, if it's more of a just experience with the system kind of problem. Where it's like, you know, hey, I need to just familiar myself with the system more, or is it something that, you know, is, as Rajan said, more systematic? Because I definitely know that there are times where I feel like the system can get in the way of fun.
I mean, I'm gonna need more specific examples on that then. Like, when has it gotten in the way of fun?
I mean, as an audience member, for the most part, it does start to impact me. Considering that most of my knowledge of
Rajan Moose.
kind of like how every time Seda says idea, his accent makes him say idea. I will become a moose. Like, quite honestly, almost the entirety of my learning of the system has just been through watching the tabletops. And I get, like, in a way, that's still kind of biased because I've experienced watching a lot of it. There are very many episodes to watch. But to tie this to, for example, not, I always confuse these two, not Eberron, but Tales of Miraleth and Guild Tales. There were certain players, and also in some of the previous campaigns and in some of the games that I've been a part of, there are players that even within 5th edition will need to be trained on how to roll the dice every single time. I remember, like, when I was watching Critical Role, there were players early on in campaign 1 and throughout campaign 2 that, like, every time they had to do something, they had to be trained on how to play the game. And 5th edition is as distilled as possible. So when you have, you know, a game that gets as complex and crazy as this, when a player has to be trained on how to do something every single time they roll a dice, it's very disruptive to me when even I understand it without having actually played the system.
I will definitely say that, yeah, those kinds of players are always going to exist, and there is absolutely nothing we can do about it.
But I am trying to approach this from a direction of not actively blaming any particular people, because I don't think that's very constructive. So, like, as it stands, pretty much, Wild Tradition is basically the only campaign. Sorry that I'm shit talking Starlight right now, but Wild Tradition is the only campaign using Scar right now where it seems like it's actually flowing and making sense. And I have all of this experience with multiple players that struggle with Scar otherwise, that it's kind of like there's a bias here, but also just a caution. But while I'm here, I did have the idea, since Seda mentioned rolling a natural 20 in 5th edition. Maybe something that would be nice. I don't know if it would be... It might not be as fun as the alternative, but maybe some sort of threshold that codifies you rolled a critical hit and you don't necessarily need to count anymore. Kind of thing.
I know we already have a crit system in the game.
Yes, but you still have to count. When you roll a natural 20 in 5th edition, you don't usually you don't have to count unless your storyteller tells you or asks you what the direct number is.
I will say on that front, there are multiple times where I have gone oh yeah, we win. I've definitely succeeded on this, or you've definitely succeeded on this to players in Wild Editions, and they're like, no, I want to know the full amount. Also, Raijin, check your DMs.
I saw what was done.
You said it around Whiskers.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Sada's the one that said it, though. How dare you, Sada?
I'm sorry.
But part of the issue here is there are so many different tables going on right now with with different storytellers that have different methods of doing things. Like in the case of Tao, he very much likes to know the full amount to see that big number. He loves big number. He is the main culprit of, dude, just let me have it. I've got more than enough successes here. But no, he wants to know that big number. Not to call him out, but I know he wouldn't give a shit, so, you know.
I mean, I do put this suggestion forward as a player choice. They can still continue to roll if they want, but just some threshold where you can feel good, where you rolled really good, and you can be like, okay, yeah, I won this roll. Because that might be something that other players might enjoy, as opposed to going through and rolling 4 10s and then 2 10s and then 1 10, because it just keeps exploding.
And yet I would be surprised if anybody would... I know something that was floated earlier, doing away with exploding 10s. If we get people that want that to be done away with, I will be shocked. Beyond belief.
I really hated saying that, because now that it's here, obviously it's going to be almost impossible to get rid of. Because once you play with exploding dice, you don't want to get rid of it. But
Absolutely.
It is, yeah, it is one of those things that even on a D10, it's surprisingly common. And when you add it to everything else that's going on with every roll, which goes back to...
This hamlet shall not fall.
Assaulty Rat raided my stream with 12 viewers.
Hey, Salty Rat! Thank you very much for that raid. How was your stream? Welcome in. Would you like a regular shout out or a random clip from your channel brought up? And welcome in, everybody. I am Zim. We are currently doing some TCG Card Shop Sim while talking about our Scar system, which is a custom TTRPG system that we've been building for about 2 years now. that we're just having lots of fun with, but it can still be improved. But otherwise, we've also got Whiskers here doing art down there in the bottom left. I'm currently using my TF Talkie so you guys can transform me live here on stream. And yeah, welcome in everyone. Got lots of stuff here on the channel. Hit that follow button. Come join us again.
You like stuff? We got stuff.
We got lots of stuff. But let's roll that clip.
Okay, I only see Salty. Everyone else is just left behind. Oh, and now we're back. I don't see
we're
Livio.
back.
There he is. Okay. This game is always
Welcome to
perfectly synced up
Space
all the time.
Detroit, baby!
Oh my
Breathe
god.
that shitty air! They're dumping sewage the moment we step out! I fucking love the city!
Oh my god. This is
Just
horrifying.
wobbling.
Well, that was a thing. What game was that? But I hope you had a good time, Salty. That was Star Citizen? Huh. Fair enough. But yeah, we're just kind of talking about our SCAR system, trying to figure out things about it. We were talking about some of the mechanics and whether they should be gotten rid of or not. And yeah, with it already being here, obviously people aren't going to want those to go away. But at the same time, as Sada's kind of pointed out a few times during this conversation, the ability to manipulate your role with willpower, soul, vigor, it's just fun. I understand it may not be as fun for the audience.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
I mean, that
the
is, like,
only audience member
I-
that I have to go off of right now is you.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the difficulties. Like, I'm offering this opinion, knowing full well that maybe this opinion should just straight up be discarded because, like, I haven't even had the chance to play the system myself. So,
Ahem,
like,
you
I
did have
know
a chance.
personally. Okay, I haven't taken an opportunity to play the system myself yet. I'm sorry, I did not want to plague your game with my satellite internet and 1,200 millisecond ping on Discord. Sue me.
I'm just maintaining you had that chance.
I'm just maintaining that you need a kiss. Mwah.
Mwah.
But yeah, it's. I don't know. I'm leaning towards, aside from the fact that obviously a lot of the culprits are that there's just not enough roles in some of these games. I do feel like maybe for some people, it's probably an overwhelming amount of options to deal with every single time they roll a dice. And in the bigger scheme of things, like, it might be okay at 4 dice, it might be okay at 12 dice, but if you're in game with the 30 attributes, like you're saying, is it still okay? Again, no experience with Exalted, so I don't know if Exalted still had more than that, but a lot of this is coming from a caution of forward thinking, because it's only going to get more complex as more mechanics get added.
I will say that, like, 30 attributes is the general end game, but even then, you're only getting a max of 10 bonus from your attributes. So overall, yeah, you've got 30, but at most it's... In general,
but
the
you've got-
maximum number of dice, in general, is intended to be about 20. So there is an actual end cap to this. there are things that can increase that or decrease that, but that is the general cap. Which I realize can still be a lot of dice, but considering it's Exalted and White Wolf and some of those other ones that can get up to insane.
I will drop it for now. I will maintain it as a small concern. I am leaning towards it being about the overwhelming number of decisions to make. Like, I still haven't watched the long-term mage or the long-term, was it werewolf? I still haven't watched those games that Kerr ran. So I don't actually know, like, because Exalted, you might have had more dice, but you didn't have, like, the willpower and soul and vigor systems, did you?
Yes, those are actually things that I brought over from the werewolf, mage, and Exalted.
Okay. Alright, so maybe it is just simply the case that I'm just frustrated with the players mostly as an audience member. So
Yeah.
I will drop it for now.
Because, yeah, when it does come down to it, like, the White Wolf systems, while not as popular as Pathfinder or D&D, they do have their following. They do have fans of those systems. And that system has been around since the 90s. So that is something that I also considered when I made that a part of Scar, is...
Yeah, I'm not saying it's untenable, and I'm not, like, honestly, once I broke out of Dungeons and Dragons and experienced systems that weren't just D20s, like, I've experienced D6 systems that weren't Pokeroll that I thought were really good, which kind of made me sad that D&D leaves so much on the table. It was just something that I'd been feeling recently and was kind of cautious about.
And I'll elaborate on that because I probably should have gone to bed an hour ago. But, like, I know for me, like Zim, you asked earlier about, like, what particular parts I've not had fun with, and I think actually Raijin kind of, like, probably explained it best. Like, what I like about Scar is, kind of that idea we poured over from Pokemon. We have the attribute expertise skill. There's a qualitative means to the dice roll. I feel like a current feedback or criticism right now is that we don't play into that enough. I'm almost going to always default to my highest dice, unless, like, I'm told otherwise, because that's advantageous for me to do so. But doing a skill check, where it's like, yeah, I'm just going to use my logic for that, for the perception, or I'm going to use my mind logic investigation. Doing the skill rolls, they're fine. But I think they're, when we come to the combat, like, because I've only actually had the limited experience of combat with both the one-shot and just the practice sparring, and what I picked up on when I was watching the VOD of the other combat encounter that I was jet-lagged for, there's just a lot going on in combat that is, at least for me, takes me out of the moment. When I'm looking at, okay, I'm going to re-roll that or skill check, vigor that, or sorry, willpower that. Okay, I have my quick action, I have my, am I going to make this a full action or just a regular action? I have this maneuver, okay, I got to do that roll with the soul save to clear off the blind. And we have all these multiple actions we're taking in the turn. And then making, 10 dice rolls there, 10 dice rolls there for each action in the turn. It does, for me, draw things down, and I lose the momentum of the moment. And the reason why I've actually not given my feedback on that in, like, the actual, like, session chat is because I'm still trying to figure out what it is that took me out of that moment, because there were everything on paper I like. Like, I like that we have the quick action, the 2 actions, as opposed to just being a single action. I like having that little bit of extra nuance to do something, and how we have dynamic moves because of that. I like how we have the ability to influence, hey, your successes are actually now 9s. Good luck. Tossing
I
mud in
think
Amos's face. I like that. And yeah, exploding dice are fun when it's like, oh, I roll more dice. Oh, I roll more dice. Yay. But I'm not sure what's pulling me out of it.
And that's kind of
I think in that case in particular, I would say it's probably the lack of experience. Though, like, again, audience member. But I've played enough complex combat systems that looking at Scar's combat system, it's not actually that complex to me. It's actually very straightforward and simplified. So I think in this case, it's just the fact that, quite frankly, you've been using Scar for like a year and a half now when Starlight switched over, but you've had 2.5 combats.
I think the first combat was actually under the old move system.
Yeah. And
So we've also had the struggle of we've had to revise, like, we've basically had to start over from learning.
And I am all for tossing out what's there and rewriting it, but I need a direction to rewrite it in.
Oh, fully agree. Like,
'Cause
that's
my biggest complaint so far at trying to develop this system is I get people that say throw it all out and rewrite it, and it's like, okay, but what am I rewriting? What am I going to change it to? What is wrong with this as it is? Or I get people that just say, oh yeah, I like it. It's like, I can't improve anything without specific feedback. I get people that are like, yeah, I like the nuance of what you can do in your turn. I get people that just have general, they don't have specific stuff, and I don't know what to do with that. As for the expertises, I will say that is a failure on the storyteller's part. The way they are intended to be done is, depending on what expertise you use, is in most situations going to give you a different result. If you go into a situation with a forceful expertise, it's going to be different than if you use cunning or charming. Obviously, how that might interact is going to depend on what the specific situation is. If you're doing science and you are trying to be forceful about it, well, things are probably going to get damaged. You might get your results, but, well, that beaker's now kind of destroyed.
Absolutely.
And that is a failure on the part of, I hate to say it, but the storyteller. They aren't using that properly, and in the case of Tao, that's especially frustrating because he's part of how this whole thing was set up in the first place.
and hey, look, it's one of those things where just like, okay, well, hey, do we, like, because you could very easily say, yeah, like, expertise is not being utilized correctly, just toss the entire thing. You lose a part of, like, how things have been designed so far. So it's like, I am 100% with you in terms of I think it's less so much, trying to fix something, understanding where the frustration is coming from. Because, like, I'm not having fun is very subjective, but it's trying to understand the reasons why. And I say that knowing full well that I don't have a bloody answer for, the times I feel like, God, I'm not having fun with this. I don't know why. It's it frustrates me because I want to give good feedback. I want to give good alternatives, because if we can say that, yes, I don't know. Okay, if it's the amount of actions we take per turn that is causing things to slow down, not be fun, then hey, the solution might be cut down one of the actions. Or hey, is there a way to streamline those actions? But I don't know what I struggle with. So that's very much why I want.
To the note on combat, first of all, it does continue to surprise me that for a system in development, there isn't like an active quote unquote campaign that's literally just stress testing combat. I know Taldarius does some.
Yeah, Taldarius has these gauntlets that he's running that I would like to get involved with, but for me, the idea of doing nothing but combat is going to get boring for both the viewers as well as myself as a player.
How about, can you get him to like record those? Because I will listen to them. And at the very least, even though like I'm not going to be able to like actively watch every single dice roll, I will be able to get, a sense of the flow of combat, especially as it compares to other systems. And I might be able to provide feedback there. I don't know if his other players would be okay with that, but that might be something useful that I could do since I've listened to all this crap anyway.
Heck, on the flip side, as a suggestion I made I think I may have made it. I forget if I did. I'm tired. I would be very interested in seeing like a one shot where we have 30 attributes, maybe some pre-made characters, just a 30 attribute one shot, just to see, hey, put maybe a bit more emphasis on the combat. How does it flow? How does it feel? Because yeah, I think, like, if we're thinking about things in hypotheticals, like it actually is useful to get some good data.
Yeah, it's been, for me, it's been hard to get these kinds of feedback and see how things are performing, because we have some very extremes in the tabletop space. We have Lost in Chaos, where it is so far on the extreme of the players are just sitting there talking the entire session. And there are a lot of campaigns that, like, that is a valid campaign, technically. It's just not something that, and it is something that I know some of the viewers do enjoy. But on the flip side, it's giving us jack all for data that we could actually use to improve the system, because it's not using the system when all they're doing is sitting there talking. Mm-hmm. And then actually, on the other...
Could you put a pin in that just a second? I really need to go to the restroom.
Sure.
I'll be back in like 5 minutes.
Sure.
Oh.
Do you have a point on that?
Mwah.
Mwah. I like how that guy walked past the store like, I don't know if I want to go in. And then he just 180s and turns around and comes in.
Sometimes you change your mind.
Yeah. I kept seeing people be like, I want to buy this item, and nobody's bought it yet. What the heck? I finally stocked the item and nobody's buying it.
I think, I guess if we're talking about the storytellers on stream with Lost in Chaos, the last couple of episodes, I've been kind of bothered by the fact that Caldreus has been the de facto storyteller at this point.
Yeah.
And again, when I make all these comments, I really do make it. Please keep in mind, I am just an audience member right now, so there is a huge bias there.
I am keeping that in mind. It's like I am very much taking what you're saying into consideration, but at the same time, I am also, frankly, taking it with a little bit of a grain of salt, because your opinion is something that is coming from the view of somebody that hasn't actually played it. And even then, you are seeing it on the in a way that is okay. Maybe the way I put that wasn't the right way that I meant it. I'm taking your opinion with a different kind of stance. Because it is something that is unique. You're seeing it from the outside. You're seeing it as an audience member. And with that, it has its advantages and disadvantages there. Like, on the one hand, yeah, you're seeing things that we're not seeing in the moment with the games. Which is part of why I'm really appreciative that you watch this stuff after the fact, because even those watching in the moment will miss these things.
Yeah,
But
it's like I get, and like even in WoW traditions, when I'm watching it in the moment, it's not either it hasn't happened like at all, or it's not disruptive when it's live. But when I'm watching a recording, I get kind of very aware when there are periods where nothing's happening for like long periods of time. And it's even magnified worse because I'm already watching it at its sped up. Like I said, with Lost in Chaos, I'm up to 3x speed. All the other campaigns I can only watch at 1.75. Lost in Chaos I can watch at 3x and not miss anything. And that's unique to Lost in Chaos. So, take from that what you will.
yeah. Hey, Black Tiger. I'm doing all right. We're just kind of we're just talking about our tabletop system that I've been developing for 2 years now, and kind of going over, well, you already know about Scar, but you know.
I think Black Tiger was sometime last week showed up and was interested in it.
Yeah. We're just
Hello,
kind of
Black
trying
Tiger.
to get some ideas for how to improve it and such, and the general flow and feel of it.
I will also say, as a side note, with me thinking about all this a couple days ago, I did have a sudden realization of why I find the combat in dungeon crawling to be so important. It's because it is it's kind of an external structure that forces the players to use their resources. And when they use their resources, they must take long rests. And when they take long rests, time progresses. Something that
Yeah.
Lost in Chaos sorely needs.
I will say I think I've been doing a good job about making sure time progresses in WoW Traditions. But that is a problem that I've seen in multiple of the campaigns.
Yeah, it's definitely improving, but with Lost in Chaos, it's bogged me down for so long at this point that even if it's getting better, I have so much negative bias right now, and it's really, it hurts. I hate it. Like the entire scene with Coral learning the aura, I thought was amazing, but then like everything else involving Squirrel happens, and like I just so viscerally disagree with everyone sometimes.
Okay.
Like I still think sorry. One thing and then we can move back to what Zeta's saying. I still think the advice for Squirrel to just do what he wants was valid and important because that's what Squirrel needs. And just because of the circumstance doesn't invalidate his need to have that agency and autonomy.
Yeah, I will agree there. But welcome back, Zeta.
Thank you. On your point about the feedback from earlier, yeah, and I think that is definitely one of the most difficult things to properly grasp because you're only going to get feedback when things are bad. You know, if we just haven't. Go on, sorry.
I will say that a slight disagreement there. I have had a lot of really good feedback with, which is something that is unique to the Scar so far. Is people are coming in and being like He loves the idea of the initiative primeval feature a lot, and I see that a lot with some of the players that are actually in our games and storytellers that they are just liking this stuff. But as far as actionable feedback, it's like, cool, you like it, great. What about this thing? No feedback.
I mean, I've been trying to give very positive feedback for Wild Traditions because I think Wild Traditions has been absolutely fantastic so far, but that might have leaned more towards affirming you as an amazing storyteller more than anything. So I don't know if that's really covered what you're looking for here.
Yeah, the broader point I was going to make is that, like, yeah, you're only going to really hear about the feedback, like, when people are upset. Like, you know, you get the, yeah, no, I had fun, that was good. Like, because, you know, hey, a session, you know, especially, you know, for those of us that would like roleplay, you know, like, a roleplay session's going to be great. But you're only going to you only hear the feedback about the system when the actual system is being used, good or bad. And it can be difficult to determine like where that cause is coming from. Like, you know, like I know like something that I kind of have to distill down when I'm giving my own feedback is like take a look back at the VOD where Dart and Amos were doing the sparring. It was 2:33 a.m. for me. Like, there was some part there where, like, you know, my brain was shutting down, getting tired. But also was like, okay, I'm kind of just doing the same amount of math all over again. Like, okay, I think I've kind of had my fill of this. Like, kind of like, well, I guess we're done. So no, it's very difficult to kind of find, well, what is causing those feelings and what's the way forward. That doesn't just devolve down to get rid of this, get rid of that, I don't like it, I'd like to have my lollipop, please.
Yeah.
I kind of bluntly, but my opinion right now is that anyone that has been just outright saying to get rid of something, as opposed to like at least just starting a dialogue and saying that they're cautious about something, probably is not coming from a very positive or constructive standpoint.
I mean, you could appreciate, like, when, hey, you've been in a session for 3 hours and there's something that is causing you to disassociate from the game and stop having fun. Kind of just want to, want it to be gone. But I think the proper the proper stages of giving feedback is, okay, what's the intention of the mechanic? Is the actual implementation reaching the desired goals? If not, what is the solution to bring it back to the original goals? Does it require an entirely different system, or does it require tweaks or clarifications or streamlining? Yeah, I appreciate it's not a very easy step.
Is some noise coming through my microphone?
A tiny bit, but it's not much.
Okay. Let me know if I need to mute, because things are starting to happen around here.
Honestly, when it comes to people that are like, just throw it out, my response is, at this point, is, okay, I'll throw you out. Because I don't want to deal with people like that.
No, definitely do not advocate for something being tossed out unless there's this alternative to provide.
Like, if you're gonna come in and that is the only thing that you have to tell me, just find a different table to play at.
That is also like one of the difficult things with designing this is even with very polished systems, so much rides on the chemistry of the table. Any system can be measurable if the table isn't fun.
Yeah. And like, I know that we are not going to make a system that everybody is going to love. It's just not something that's going to be possible.
Oh, absolutely.
Because,
which is kind of why I
want to find that.
Which is kind of why I brought up earlier the idea of like, who's the target audience? Is it the people that typically play Exalted or World of Darkness? Because, like, I mean, I know straight up, you're not looking for the people that only play 5th edition, obviously, but we're still going to end up making comparisons to 5th edition because 5th edition was very successful in bringing a lot of people into tabletop, and it's a very easy thing to make a comparison to when it comes to the whole of the tabletop game.
My goal with Scar from the start has been to target people that are wanting to play as non-normal characters. And with that, the goal has been to make a system that is somewhere between Pathfinder and 5th edition. And probably the best way to have gone about that would have been, D20. But I like the D10. We're not necessarily targeting those that like Exalted, because for those that like Exalted, they're gonna dislike this because, well, Kerr, for example, has from the start, been very firmly in the camp of they're not rolling enough dice. And that is the opinion of somebody that plays Exalted. So, you know, you guys want the opinion of somebody that plays Exalted. We're not rolling enough dice. We should be rolling more. A lot more. I personally think the amount of dice that we're rolling at different power levels is good. We start out relatively small, but it ramps up. And it does have that kind of that kind of cap. So it looks like I am just going to be able to keep building up debt on my rent forever on this game.
Yay.
Experiment success.
Yeah. Like, I was curious what would happen, and so far, nothing.
Hopefully, at the very worst, you just get a warning like, hey, you kind of need to pay something or else, like, we're shutting you down.
That's what I'm hoping will happen, but...
A particular thought with the combat. Since Zeta was saying the options might feel a little overwhelming, what if some of the maneuvers, you made them something that the player has to, like, actively purchase through, like, a feat or something like that? And if they're not powerful enough to merit that yet, make them slightly more powerful. But the point being, the player can engage with that element of combat when they're ready to add it to their repertoire, as opposed to it just being among the list of options that they can use. And obviously, probably not every feat like this, but or not every maneuver like this, but you know, enough to bring it down so that the newer player isn't overwhelmed by options.
The only problem there is that I can only think of like 2 or 3 maneuvers that we could actually realistically do that with.
Yeah. Like, that's kind of what I was thinking. I couldn't really think of very much justification, but...
Because, like... aim, we could make that a feat. Let me just...
I mean, charge is technically a feat itself, but we did make an affinity feat that relies on charge, so that would be kind of messy. I mean, charge is a feat in, like, 5th edition and stuff, so...
Well, that's just a combat maneuver in Pathfinder. Assist was technically taken out of being a maneuver. Brace is just an action you can do in 5th edition. Cleanse is something unique to the system, but making that a feat...
I need it.
Huh?
You kind of need that one.
Yeah.
You can't lock that one behind a feat.
But unfortunately here, I'm going to have to go to bed. I should have gone to bed like an hour and a half ago.
Goodbye, Zeta.
Yeah, I think this might be where I call the stream as a whole, personally. Because I could use a little bit of break, too. But...
yeah.
Hopefully, like, this is stuff that I definitely want to have a conversation with the whole dev team about. Just gotta figure out when with the holidays and everything.
So we can be at MF5. You'll have everyone, you can put Taldarius on call, and we can just have a fireside chat, except Taldarius is on speaker.
Well, Key also. I don't think Key is going to MFF. But otherwise, yeah, not a bad idea. Either way, thank you everybody for joining us today for TCG Card Shop Simulator, as well as this Art Marten stream. Check out our website, zgfgaming.com. We've got links for our Discord, Telegram, Mastodon, Blue Sky, Patreon, and more. They are on the website as well as down in the description below through our link tree. Thank you to my patrons, tippers, and subscribers. It is your support that keeps this channel alive and going. I cannot do this without your guys' help and your support, so thank you. Consider becoming a patron over at patreon.com/zgfgaming. It's one of the best ways to support the channel, though you can also do so by sharing the stream around, as well as coming by, hanging out, grabbing packs of cards to stream loots, using our Humble Bundle partner link, or by checking out our SCAR system that we've been talking about tonight and letting us know what you think. But for now, thank you so much for joining, and I bid you the most fondest adieu.
You're all cute.